Hi, welcome to Starlight Talk. I'm here this week with Eva, and we're going to talk about her story and somatic coaching and all of her practices. So I'm really excited to share that with you guys. As usual, please check out the website OurTism.com. I have my blogs up there where I write about living with autism. I do this broadcast every week, Wednesdays at 7. Next week, we're going to have Zoe Martin come on, and we're going to talk about late diagnosis. So come back next week, start asking questions. We'll get to as many as we can. So I'm excited. Ava, do you want to introduce a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you, number one, for even having me on here. This is exciting and good to see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Eva Angvert Harren. I have a practice in San Francisco Bay Area, and I offer somatic coaching, mainly work with people to help them heal anxiety, depression, and addictive behaviors, addictive habits.
So you have a really cool story because you weren't diagnosed till you were in your 60s, right?
Yes, it was. I was working with Danny doing workshops. And I was there because I work with a lot of people in recovery. I'm in recovery myself. So that was my main specialty, was people in recovery and people with anxiety and, habits. And I got along with those people, very well. And I got suspicious after a year working with Danny. I thought, I'm going to go and check myself out because it seems like I'm just almost getting along too well with those people. It was funny. So I went to a psychologist in San Francisco and did the testings and did the interviews. And he told me that, yeah, no doubt that I had autism. And I was 58.
That's so crazy. But I know, like, for girls on the spectrum, it's really common to be really late diagnosed, and the average age for being diagnosed is in your 40s. Which, I mean, that's a problem that needs to be solved, right?
Yeah, and it's one of my, I don't know if I have 4 or 5 diagnoses, because like when Christina died, I went into therapy, and they started with manic depressive, and then there was OCD, and then it became, borderline personality disorder. And then, well, maybe you just have PTS. It looks better, and this is under the period of about 25 years. And they all kind of overlap a little bit in behaviors and anxiety. And so, they all had a little piece of everything.
Where'd you go? I'm back.
I lost it. No, he's back.
Yeah, I was misdiagnosed with OCD and ADD, and my twin sister was misdiagnosed with anxiety and depression. And so it's so common to be misdiagnosed, especially as a female on the spectrum. And there's so many other things that seem to be thought of first before autism, because for some reason autism is thought of as more of a male thing, which is starting to be really proven not to be true.
Yeah. And I think also we women, I don't know, we're raised differently. We're kind of supposed to be quiet and pleasing and, all this stuff. So we just get more and more quiet. And but many of the women I have worked with in recovery have later gone, because of my story, I tell them, and they're like, well, I'm going to go and check myself out, because it's common in our recovery stories, women that has started drinking at 13, 14, and then they sober up around 30, 40, and then they still feel weird and funny and everything. And, you know, a lot of our stories are similar that, oh, wow, maybe I should go and check out, you know, what it is that's going on with me outside just alcoholism. So,
yeah, I know that alcoholism can be common for those on the spectrum because that it takes away that anxiety and all that uncomfortable feeling, and you just start. It helps you to loosen up, and then people are like, "Oh, I like you when you drink," and you get that that nice feeling, like people starting to accept you. So it's like, oh, now I should drink before I hang out with people, so they don't see that other side of me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, self-medication is very common.
Yeah. So we're getting some cool comments. Hi from Littleton. Hi, SB. Hi, Danny. Thanks for joining.
Okay. Oh, hey, Danny. I can't see any of those things, though, huh?
Hi, Richard. Thank you guys for joining.
Yeah, that's fine. That's great.
We have someone who's 53 being tested next week for Asperger's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know that diagnosis process can be a huge deal. It's like a lot of work to go through, but I think it's so worth it. You get so much information about yourself from that.
Yeah, I don't know. I had mixed feelings when I finally got the diagnosis.
Yeah, I get that.
Well, it explained a lot of my past.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was also, oh, shoot, now I know what's quote unquote wrong with me. And I remember the psychologist looked at me and said, you know, there's nothing wrong with you, Eva. You're just different. And I'm like, well, that's really easy for a non-different person to say. You know, you're just different. You have no idea how different the whole world is because I'm different.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, something I like to tell parents is like when they get frustrated trying to communicate with their special child, I say, well, imagine that from the child's point of view, you're dealing with one person who speaks a different language. The child's dealing with a whole world of that. So you're only getting a glimpse of what this child is going through. So yeah, being someone on the spectrum and dealing with a world of neurotypicals can be really challenging because you don't really understand that point of view. And I wish like there was a book on what it's like to be neurotypical so I could read that and understand what the normal person is thinking and why they think that way.
It's really interesting to talk with my daughter. One of my daughters have nonverbal learning disability, and my other daughter is neurotypical. And she's home now from Bali, and we're discussing, you know, I mean, how do I come off? Like, how do I come across? Like, where, because I know I have social blind spots, and I know I can be a little impulsive or say something that I think is funny and absolutely at the wrong time. Or, you know, people get offended easy if I just blurb out something because my editor wasn't on at that time. So there is definitely still signs.
So do you want to talk a little bit about your story? Because you have an interesting past. You came to America in your 20s, right?
Yeah.
And on your own, and that's a really big deal. And then being on this, I know already dealing with a different language and a different culture is big, but then there's also dealing with being on the spectrum and not getting as much as you in a neurotypical would in that situation.
You know, I was really messed up already when I came to America. I was 25. I was full-blown drinker. And I have a pretty violent past, you know. In my childhood, I have childhood abuse and teenage abuse, and I mean, whatever details you want, you can ask me, but I don't need to just blur it all out. But so I started drinking at 13, and you know, before then, I lived on an earthquake. I was just shaking all the time, and I had cramps and chest pains, and I couldn't really breathe. I was nervous, and having no idea what to say, when to say it, and you know the look that you get from other people, that look, and I had that look all the time, but I didn't know. And the moment I drank, you know, I didn't get any prettier or any funnier or anything. I just got this lovely feeling. I don't. And if there's anything I miss with alcohol, is that wonderful feeling of, I just don't care. Because I can still have a little self-consciousness and wonder, you know, I see myself here in the screen and I just feel like I look funny. You know, there is always that feeling that there is something wrong with me. Because there has been something wrong with me for so many years. And then the world kind of reacts towards you like there is something wrong with you. So it gets so imprinted. So when I came over here, I was 25. I had been a truck driver and a car mechanic and a butcher, you know, in Sweden, jobs that I didn't necessarily want. But someone said, oh, you know, women shouldn't drive trucks. So I had to prove them wrong, you know. I couldn't really figure out what I wanted to do, but I got more directed of, oh, I show him. And then if someone asked me, why would you ever want to drive trucks? I could always say, well, he told me I couldn't. So I didn't really have to be responsible for the choice, you know, and I have done that in many ways, just truck driving and, you know, car mechanic, even go to America. I was homeless in America and I would never come home and let someone tell me, I told you so, you'd never make it. You know, I'm in America because someone told me I couldn't make it. So that's the kind of attitude I had. So you have to kind of like, how much do you want to know? Because I'm nervous that I'm going to just rattle up 30 minutes, you know, in my story.
We have a question from Richard. He's asking, getting diagnosed later in life affect your life differently, such as gaining employment or getting life insurance? I'm starting to see there's social stigma about having autism.
So is he asking me if it was harder to get insurance?
I think he's asking what was the difference between before having the diagnosis versus after? Like, is it, for those later in life who are thinking about it, is it worth getting that diagnosis?
Well, I can tell it to you, like, because I live on my husband's insurance and things like that, so that didn't affect me. But I tell you one thing, if we're out and about and someone looks at you and say, look over there, there is Eva. Did you know that she has alcoholism? You might say, yeah, but she's not drinking. And yeah, but, you know, she's a coach. And, you know, so you always have that, yeah, but. Now, when someone looks over and would say that, oh, there's Eva. Did you know that she has autism? Oh, that's what's wrong with her. There is a total different stigma from having alcoholism or having autism, because now suddenly I mean, there are alcoholics all over. Some are sober, some are not. You know, it's becoming so common now. But autism is a total different social stigma.
For me, I got the diagnosis at 16, and it really, for me, it gave me a reason why my life had been challenging. But before that, it was like, oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm stupid. I'm lazy, all these things. But having that, I could be like, okay, I think differently, and the world isn't really set up for someone who's like me. And so it was like a weight off my shoulders. Like, oh my goodness, this is what's going on. And then now I can go find a different way to do things. And when I do it, I can say, well, I have autism, so I need to do it differently, instead of people looking at me like I'm crazy and I couldn't even explain it. So, and not here where I live, there's so many, I mean, we're still missing out on a lot of services, but there's a lot of services I can get now that I have officially been diagnosed. I can go, there's something called Access, which is like Uber for those with disabilities.
Oh, wow.
That, and it's like $3 a ride instead of like $20 a ride. So so there's like a lot of cool things that I can get. And I know like not everywhere has those things, but to have a disability, I can get more than I would if I wasn't diagnosed, because a lot of those places won't let you have it unless you have a diagnosis.
And I think now it's so different. So, and be diagnosed at 16, you know, if I would have been diagnosed at that age.
Yeah, even when I was diagnosed, from then until now, things have gotten better, where I was pushed into ABA, I was pushed into like all these things that really to me weren't beneficial, and ABA has changed over this time, and I know it's very different now. I still wouldn't recommend it, but there's more of a choice of like and options than I think when I was little, where really there was just like the one special needs classroom, where when I was looking at like high school, they then added there's all these different paths where you can get so many, you can be in a whole different track than everyone else, or you can just have one class that's away from everyone else, or you can have a helper. Like you had all these different choices, where when I was in elementary school, that wasn't an option. That was, you were on, if you had a diagnosis, then this was the classroom you went to, and this is what you did. So I think it's already come a long way in just like the past 10 years.
I think it's probably, I mean, the best thing you can do if you get diagnosed with autism. My daughter got diagnosed with nonverbal learning disability, and there wasn't as much support for that. And I think when I got diagnosed, I was at, 58. I was like, darn it, here is another diagnosis, now I have more stuff. And one of the things is, I think my life would have been much gentler and not as harsh had that kind of support been there when I was 16. And that route, that instead, I went for the alcohol, and I went straight down the tube. And I couldn't understand people. I couldn't read in between the lines. So a whole group could kind of chat and giggle and look at each other, and I could sit there and I was totally clueless. And most of the time it was about me. So you'll learn that even at my age, I'm 60 now. Holy, I'm 60. And it's just bizarre to look back at my life and then be diagnosed at 58, how it could have been different.
So I'm interested, because language can already be so difficult for someone on the spectrum. How was it with learning a different language and dealing with that?
For me, and I don't know if this is autism or if it's just me, I think in pictures. I love Temple Grandin's book, Thinking in Pictures, because I could so see myself that, and that was long before I knew I had autism. So when I use new words, I almost have to feel them. I can't just stick them in a sentence and then that's what I mean. I have to kind of use it 4, 5, 6, 7 times and kind of feel it, like putting on a jacket and see if it fits before I dare to use the word out in my language. It took me the longest time to speak English. And because of that, and then where I grew up, quote unquote, when I came over here, I hung out in the bars in San Francisco. So the English that I learned to start with was not the kind of English you want to learn.
I know a lot of, because we had a lot of foreign students at my high school. One of the things they had a lot of difficulty with was they didn't understand sarcasm at first, because sarcasm is a very American thing. And those on the spectrum even have struggled with it growing up with it, because we're very straightforward and say exactly what we mean, and sarcasm is so saying the opposite of what you mean, and so that's can be easily misinterpreted.
And simple things like, how do you like my dress? And they would say, oh, yeah, that's pretty. And I would think, oh, really? I wouldn't hear the sarcasm. Yeah. I would only hear the words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a book to write about all the misunderstandings in the language. And they had so much fun with me because I was a bartender. So they had all these slogans that they tried me on, and I had no idea.
So let's talk a little bit about your somatic coaching and therapy. Can you describe what that is?
It's a body awareness, actually. It's and I think it has worked very well for me now, recognizing that I do have autism, but it also for PTS or bipolar or any of that, is this whole connection with the body. The first time I had a somatic session, it felt like I just landed in my body. It's like I suddenly I was here. Like the sand came down in the hourglass. It was amazing. And I suddenly like I've been swimming underwater my entire life, and then suddenly I just looked up and there was land. I could breathe. It's a very strange experience for me. So yeah, it was like I was suddenly here in the same dimension as everybody else. I always felt like I was in a bubble. There was like this thin cellophane film between me and the rest of the people. I could be like light years away, but I knew I was here. So with somatic, to learn to just, even right now when you and I talk, to just, are we noticing our internal self? Do I feel my chest? Do I just feel the seat that I'm sitting on? Or do I also feel the inside where my stomach is? And, and it just kind of anchored me in myself.
Yeah, I know, like with the heightened sensory experience and with like being told throughout an autistic person's life that you're wrong and you're wrong and you're wrong, that it can be difficult to want to be in your body and to like your body and to like who you are, and to center yourself is really important, because it is, I talk about, it's important to check in with your body, because a healthy body is also a healthy mind. And so checking in, do I need water? Do I need to go outside and take a break? And am I getting overwhelmed? And to just keep. So then you just have to take a 5-minute break instead of breaking down and spending a week in your room, and doing that, I think, is really important. And learning what your body's telling you, it takes a while to recognize that. But once you do it, it's really beneficial.
And I think you just said it, you can take a couple of minutes instead of a week, because, with my bipolar loop and all that stuff, it used to be 6 to 8 weeks where you get more and more and more and more tense and tense and tense. And then eventually you snap, and then there is depression. So this whole loop was about 6 to 8 weeks. And my kids knew exactly where I was in my stages. And with somatic experiencing, for me, and body awareness, that cycle is now about 20 minutes. I can still have dips, but I know, and And the freedom, Chloe, when you know that my thought is not reality, it's just a thought. And there is a little space between me and that thought. So when depression hits and life is over and there is no meaning for me to live, there is a little piece of me that remembers, that's just a thought. I'm going to be with that for maybe 10 minutes, and then it shifts. It's amazing what a freedom that is.
Yeah, I've definitely been able to recognize faster and faster when I'm in defense mode and defensive thoughts, and where if that anger in me gets triggered, I go, okay, this isn't reality, like that's not really true. And like it's so easy for my parents to do it to me, where like I'll be like, hey mom, hey dad, I'm celebrating this one thing I just did. Instead of them being like, yes, they go, yay, and then they add, but did you do this and that and this and that? And I'm like, oh no, you're not really excited for me. You don't think I can handle this. And I'm like, okay, that's a defensive thought. No.
And I think it's also a parenting thing, because we think we want you guys to do so well, and there are a million little things you can do to do well. And I mean, our heads are spinning. I do the same with my daughter. She could call home and she's so proud and she's looking for kudos because she's done one thing right. Yeah. And before she finished her sentence, my brain is going, yeah, but did you do this and this and this that you promised? So it's a tough one. Even at 60, I can tell my husband, oh, I just did this. And then I'll catch myself. Am I looking for kudos here? Like, am I being 15? Because I just kind of want to hear myself that I actually got something accomplished. Mm-hmm. It's but what you say about reality, though, because even the stop, drop, check that I know, when you get triggered in any way, to just have the ability to remember to just stop. And, when you say, oh, wait a minute now, this is not really true. I'm just triggered. There is something going on in my body that makes this brain spin out.
Yeah. And when I am like talking to my mom or like texting her or something, and I get into that state of mind, I'm like, throw the phone away and go like, don't text her right now, because you're just gonna like say fuck you or like something you regret, right? And I was explaining this to like some other mom at some point, and she was like, that's why my daughter will just ignore me when I text her, because that's all I text her. Yeah. And I'm like, why didn't you text back? And she was like,
And to be honest, having autism and then being a mom is really complicated. Mm-hmm. Especially if you don't know you have autism. You might say, oh, I have PTS, or I have this, or there's something I have because I'm definitely not normal, and I'm screaming at my kids and I don't know how to be a mom. Where is the book? Because are you supposed to allow this and not allow that? And I mean, the fears are so overwhelming. And then you have another million perfect children, and perfect moms who seem to know everything. So it's really, I mean, even quote unquote, the regular people that don't have autism, it's challenging being a parent. And then if you're running around like me, totally clueless, kind of like a pinball, asking other parents, do you do this? Do you do that? And they're kind of looking at you like, do you ask those questions? That's kind of weird. So if you're a parent, I just mean, and you have autism, you really check out some help.
Mm-hmm. Something that I try to remind my mom is to react out of reality instead of fear. Because she knows that's one of her weaknesses. She goes to the worst case scenario and goes, well, we need to prevent that. Well, it hasn't happened. And so like when I would like come downstairs dressed in a goofy outfit, she's like, oh, you might not want to wear that because someone might bully you. And I wasn't hearing, I need to protect you from being hurt. I was hearing, you don't like my outfit. I look stupid. You don't like me. And so we were having this disconnect. And so when I told her, please stop saying these things, please, if it hasn't happened, like don't act like it already has. And that really brought us closer together when she's able to recognize this is a fear, this isn't reality. I'm allowed to be afraid, but I don't need to act out on this thought that isn't reality.
And then we don't want you kids to get hurt. I mean, because if you're hurt, I'm hurt, you know, so it's this whole thing. If I can protect my kids from getting hurt, then I don't have that much to deal with. I mean, the moment I saw my child being bullied, I want to kill those kids. I mean, you get, you know, mama bear. You can't stand seeing your child being bullied. So it's really difficult. I had the same issue with my daughter, like being like your mom. It's this, I mean, it's tough not to be hanging right over there trying to protect your kids.
Yeah, and then I had the opposite problem with my dad, where like it's with guys coming over, there's like the stereotype that the dad's supposed to frighten them, and like my dad would be like, hey, what's up? I'm like, no, can you just scare them like a little bit for me? Like,
no. But you know, it seems not, well, it's a tough one. That now when I'm talking about me again, when I compare with you, because my husband is, you know, was a soldier. So, and he worked whatever with top secret and things. So the boys just imagined how dangerous he could be, which far over exceeded anything that he ever was. But that was useful because he just had to look at them and I'll get your social security number and then we'll talk, you know. So he used it just as a joke, but it worked pretty well. How is it going now, though?
Yeah, so there's like that balance. Like I still want my parents to worry about me, but I also don't want them to like hover over me.
It's a difficult balance, and I think communication is probably the healthiest way we can do. And there's one thing I say about autism now, though, that so I don't know about you, but I have a real hard time lying. I don't see why people lie. I can't keep track of my lies if I try to lie. And when I'm lying, you see it in my face. It is so obvious that if I don't need to make a bigger idiot out of myself, I might as well just tell the truth. And I don't know about you, you know, with lying part, I don't understand why a person would just flat out lie.
Lillian, my twin sister, has a much harder time with lying. Where like I understand white lies, and I wouldn't categorize that as lying, but I do understand just lying in general. I feel like people lie a little bit too much. Like one of my pet peeves is when I call someone to hang out and they make up an excuse instead of just saying, hey, I don't want to hang out today.
Yeah.
You know, like you're gonna that's such an easy lie to get caught in, because like if you say you're sick or if you say you are somewhere and then I see you next time and like and I ask you about it and you go, oh, I never did that, I wasn't sick, but you're not gonna I've never known anyone to remember that lie. And I'm just like, why couldn't you just say it? You like, I understand social anxiety, I understand autism, I understand feeling tired and just not wanting to hang out. I've felt that way, so why can't you just say that? Because then I would understand. I don't understand the lying, because the lying makes me feel like you don't want to hang out with me and you don't like me and you needed an excuse, instead of just saying, you know what, I don't feel up to it today.
And that is so much nicer, because of course it's okay if you don't want to hang out with me. But if you kind of lie to me, you kind of disrespect me. I mean, I'm not that stupid, you know? So yeah, it's a tough one. The social lies with the pretty dress and No.
But like, I get the white lie if like someone's sick and you go, oh, you look like you're doing better today. I get that kind of stuff. Like, I understand why you would do that. I don't really do that as much. I think I still like with me and my dad, I'll say like, oh, I feel like poop. He's like, at least you don't look like poop. I'm like, so like we're like a pretty honest family. So when someone actually says, oh, you look like you're doing better, I actually believe them.
Uh-huh.
But I know I get if you aren't comfortable actually saying, well, you look really sick today. Like, I get that. That can be uncomfortable to say, so you might have white lies there. I get that. And some people can't. And or yeah, I get if you give someone a gift, Lillian thinks that you should be honest and say, I don't like it. But like a lot of people don't like that, so you give them the white lie. Oh, thank you for thinking of me, and like that kind of stuff. And so I get like different people can't handle the truth, and it's more hurtful, and that's why you would give them a white lie. But I just don't get like why you would outright lie about things that you don't really need to lie about.
And it's funny if you tell people, don't give me anything. I don't want anything. I don't want anything. And then they still give you something. And you're like, but I told, you can't say, I told you not to give me anything.
Yeah.
You have to say, oh, thank you. And it's a beautiful vase. What am I going to do with a vase? I don't have vases. And every time they come and visit, they automatically scan the home to see if their vase is there, and all this. And I just think I'd just rather not.
Yeah. There's and then there's the people who are like, oh, don't get me anything. And then they're like, why didn't you get me anything? You told me not to. So when you are straightforward, I feel like people don't know if you are being straightforward either. Because there's so many people who just for some reason lie and think you can read their mind. I don't understand that at all, why you wouldn't just be straightforward about things.
Well, I had to learn how to sugarcoat my language, and now I guess we Europeans too. I hear that a lot, that we are more direct than people in America. New Yorkers are more direct than people in California. If I understand, people in California are the most sensitive people in America. So I really did have to learn. I was out networking and things, and I had to listen to other people's conversations. And it was so much fluff there. There was so much unnecessary fluff. Like, what do you want? Do you want to sell me something? Then say that, So I think we really benefit. We, with autism, can really benefit by just listening to how other conversations are done. And I had to recognize that, wow, I am really direct, to the point where I would benefit myself if I could kind of soften up my language a little bit and, be a little more considerate of other people. Because one thing that I was taught early on, because, well, at least I was honest, was that honesty without compassion is torture. And I tortured a lot of people, which I really regret.
So we got a question from Sarah. She said, if Eva could briefly describe what somatic therapy does for helping people with Asperger's get out of defense mode.
So getting out of defense mode, I can't say somatic work gets you out of defense mode. I can say somatic work absolutely helps you with anxiety. Defense mode can be like an umbrella that includes many, many different behaviors. So to say that it gets you out of defense mode is not really accurate for me. But the somatic work that I do with people with Asperger's or, on the spectrum is that it helps them calm down their nervous system. It helps them recognize their internal sensations and recognize that that's not really reality of what's happening right
Describe
now.
an example of what a somatic session with you would be like?
What are you saying?
Could you describe an example of what a somatic session with you would be like?
Well, if we had one right now, I do, quite a few over Skype and so on. It depends on if you have a specific situation that you want to talk about as a client. If you're, well, every time I see a dog, I freak out. Okay, then we have a specific situation. And I would ask, how you feel and so on when you're thinking about that situation. And there's a certain way that the technique goes. There's something called TP that is a specific way of guiding you into your body and literally unplug that trigger for, like, say, for the dog or for something. So, well, I always get anxiety when, and then there is a when, then we deal with that. I really, really want everybody to know there is no reason to go back into any traumatic situation. There is no reason to ever go back to try to figure out what happened really, really there. There are many, many more gentle ways of just learning how to recognize your physical sensations in your body, so that when you're in school or whatever situation you're in, when you start learning how, okay, my chest is getting hot or my stomach starts cramping, that is often what makes us scared. Not necessarily the situation, but the situation triggers a somatic sensation in the body that is so uncomfortable that we start freaking out. I don't know if that makes sense. And so if you're living in a body that is full of tension and pain, it's very easy to just become dissociated. And then we have no idea what it is that drives us, like what drives our behavior. So we eat or drink vodka or do something instead so we don't have to feel. So a whole session is kind of difficult I can't have a session with you right now, but it really has to do with helping people identify their own body and identify how their own body feels like and when it feels like that. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I know, like, I remember a friend who I always felt like she was up here, never in her body. And I would ask her, like, how she's feeling, and she couldn't even guess. She had no idea. And I feel like especially teenagers go through that, where they're not comfortable in their body and they spend a lot of time just like floating above, and they don't understand their emotions. And so when you're brought back in, it can be like really scary at first to start feeling everything. And so you want to jump out again.
Yeah.
But it's really important to check in with your body, and it's a healthier way to be.
And really, whatever trauma we've had in our past, whenever it happened, if it was in utero or at 3 or whatever, that is a disconnect right there. And it doesn't have to be serious trauma that someone dropped you from 3rd floor or, that you got beaten or molested. It can be that you had to go to the dentist and you were so overwhelmed, or so trauma is really, it's overwhelmed. It's when your brain can't process what's happening in the moment. So what's happening just kind of becomes like a little ice cube, and it's compartmentalized and we don't want to feel it. And that kind of controls our behavior. It's like living on an earthquake and everything is kind of shaky and, like this. And I can't focus on you because I can barely hold on to myself. That's how it has kind of shown up to me. And the more somatic sessions that I had personally, the more I calmed down. And I just wished that parents like me should have had somatic sessions before they had children.
Mhm.
I was not a good mom the first 10 years. I was a very overreactive, bipolar, swinging, reactive. So I really hoped, because parents call me, what can I do with my child? And I'm asking them, what are you doing for you?
Yeah, I know I've seen that a bunch. Like Danny Rady gives that advice of do a little self-care. Oh, I don't have time. What, you don't have time for 5 minutes to make yourself some tea or to listen to a song or to, whatever it is that you need to do for self-care. Like you have time for that. You just need to make time in your day to do a little bit of something that makes you feel like yourself.
Yeah, and those 5 minutes is an investment, because you're saving time, because you're not going to freak out in 2-3 hours and spend maybe 30 minutes on just spinning because you're overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. And so even if like you think it's really important that you need to be with your kid, but if you just take those 5 minutes before you interact, then you're in a better state of mind to deal with the issue. And because if maybe you didn't do that and you interact with the child, you might make whatever the situation is worse. Where if you spent those 5 minutes and went, okay, I'll get to it in a second, and then went in calmly, then you have a much different interaction, right? Because you're in a healthier state of mind and you don't have irrational thoughts that are fearful or defensive or angry. Instead, you see reality and you can act in reality.
And our kids feel us. It's like the parents, the home is like the oxygen that the kids are swimming in. There is nothing we parents can do that the kids don't know about. They feel it. And I think that's what we as parents really have to think about. If the couples are fighting or if something is going on, the kids may not know the details, but they are uncomfortable too. And already there, they learn how to get into defense mode because they don't know how to deal with what's going on. So we parents can sometimes put our kids into defense mode.
Yeah, and kids pick up and copy and mimic so quickly. And especially those with autism, they have echolalia and they mask and they mimic to a little bit more of an extreme because they're trying to find any way they can to fit in. And so if you're always coming into a situation not in the healthy state of mind, then the kid learns to do that as well. And then you're dealing with two people who come into situations very angry or very upset or very depressed or very anxious instead of someone coming in with a healthy state of mind.
Absolutely. And the way we talk, the no's and the don't, I really, I took a couple of classes in nonviolent communication classes, which has a fabulous way of turning the language and looking for the people's need. If someone is screaming at you, it's probably something they need. It's not my job to meet your needs all the time. But if I learn to communicate and look for the person's pain and need instead of their behavior in the moment, a lot of more communication can be done. And just, jump right in and scream back. And then we just lost all the communication.
So do you want to talk about your book?
Oh. My book, Beyond Recovery, it has very little to do with autism. It's actually about going through, recovery and learning how to deal with anxiety and stress and addictive habits. And due to the fact that I have worked with a lot of people in recovery, which I am in recovery myself, this book is really taking you through stages And as you're learning different stages in your own recovery from whatever it is, if it's just a habit, but it takes you through with exercises and so on to get unstuck. You know, we get stuck in certain behaviors, and then it seems like we can't move on. And often there are hidden fears that we don't really want to look at. So it takes you through this. You don't need a coach. You don't need anything. You can literally, if you do every single exercise in this book, you will move through blocks. And I only say that because I got some email feedbacks back that really actually validated that. So that was fun. It does work.
Well, thank you so much for being on. We have about 10 minutes left. So are there any stories that you want to tell?
Well, you ask me if there's anything I can say that can help someone, or, you know, that way, because I got a million stories. I'm 60 years old and I don't know if they do any good for anyone. But if there is something specific that I can, you know, address, I would love to be helpful.
I love the story you told about you wanting your husband to think about you and just send you like a text or call you. I love that story.
So with the calendar on the computer. Yeah, because I, of course, me, myself, and Eva didn't have enough attention. So I really wanted my husband to, you know, what other husbands do, you know, you see on TV and so on, that they, oh, I was just thinking about you, and just text you and say, I love you. Or, you know, I wanted some kind of space in his brain that he actually thought of me also, and not all that other stuff. So I started to get phone calls, and I started to get, you know, text messages, and, oh, I just thought of you today, love you. And I thought, wow, wasn't that sweet? You know, maybe he heard me. And then one day I stood over his shoulders when he was working on his computer, and it popped up one of these memory things that said, call Eva. And I was like, what? And his calendar popped up. So he had programmed his calendar for a sporadic call Eva note. So his whole calendar had this little window, certain days, call Eva. So he didn't think of me by himself. He had to be reminded. I got so mad. And I just flared up. And of course, felt like it had all been fake. And then it was pointed out to me by my coach, you know, pretty sweet of him anyway, to at least try to look like he was thinking of me. You know, so it was all a joke. But it's smart. If there are any men out there that have women like me, you know, program your computer and then get little memories, and they're going to suddenly just love you more because you're thinking about them.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You were like, I want you to think about me and what I'm going through, what I'm doing, but you weren't like thinking about how differently he thinks and how he needs to do things differently, right?
Well, you know, and it is one thing, and I don't know if this is autism or PTS or what it is, but there is one thing: when you live on an earthquake and you're totally mentally consumed just with surviving. Oh, it's too hot, it's too cold, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. Oh, there's the kid. I mean, your brain is going a million miles an hour. There is no space for anybody else. Yeah. Oh, like, oh, hi, Chloe. How are you doing today? There is no space for that. Oh, hi, Chloe. Yeah, I did this, and then I did that, and then I did that, and it was all about me. There was no consciousness. And it's proven in MRIs and so on that there is no frontal lobe activity if you're running in amygdala, you know, all the time. So that is something that somatic work has done for me, because when you calm down the nervous system, the frontal lobe, the executive functioning, is actually coming more alive. Mm-hmm. And then there is space for you. So suddenly we calm down and we're like, oh, there's a whole world out there that I can think of instead of thinking of me. So it's a revelation when you can calm down.
Well, thank you for being on. You guys should all check out Eva's book. I have her all her stuff linked. Go check out her Facebook and her website. And Danny has a bunch of links of Eva's stuff in the comments.
Oh my goodness, I don't see. Thank you, Danny.
Come back next week. I'm gonna have Zoe Martin on, and we're gonna talk about like diagnosis and so many other cool things. I do this live stream every Wednesday at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and I try to bring on guests and talk about anything related to autism. I also have my photography and art show on Friday. All that information is on my Facebook page. Please come and check it out if you can. At Michael's Learning Place here in Redondo Beach. And I have articles on the website OurTism.com where I write about living on the spectrum. Tomorrow, OurTism has our support group for adults on the spectrum. We always invite new people if you want to come check us out. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any last minute questions, we'd love to answer them. If not, we'll probably be signing off.
Well, I wanted to say thank you to you. I really want to say thank you for your time, Chloe, and for just, well, I love talking with you on the retreats and on the workshops, but this has been really, I think you're just brilliant to do this, and how well you're doing. I'm just so impressed that you're such an example for other kids like us, so old or young. So thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's really fun talking to you. All right, guys. Thank you for watching.
All right. Thank
Stay
you.
colorful.